Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games and part 9 of our How to Play Core Space series. I'm Lee, and in this video we'll be looking at the NPC phase. So far in our series we've covered everything up to and including the Purge phase, but now it's time to focus on the NPC phase. In the NPC phase, all other non-Purge NPCs controlled by the game will act, and most NPCs are optional for most missions, and you can mix and match which ones you use for each game. For your first few games, it's recommended that you might not even use the NPCs at all while you learn the rest of the rules, so you can skip this phase entirely. Just like the Purge, NPCs are controlled by the game, but should be physically moved and rolled for by the player with the turn counter, unless that player's crew is being attacked, in which case another player should roll. Now let's look at the order of activation. NPCs are always activated in the same order, starting with Galactic Corps, Security, Gangers, and finally Civilians. NPCs are also ranked, just like the Purge, and this is shown on their boards. For each type of NPC activated, the highest ranked one on the board will activate first, followed by the next highest rank, and so on. If there are multiple NPCs of the same type and rank on the board, the player with the turn counter can choose the order in which they activate. Now let's look at the actions, and for prone characters, NPCs that have been knocked prone must use their first action to stand up before making the rest of their activation as normal. And if an NPC's turn is determined by a die roll instead of taking actions, and we'll see this with civilians, then standing up replaces the die roll and they will do nothing further this round. NPCs always use the statistics that are on their boards, and while they are able to carry items, they cannot use them. Unless a die roll defines a specific action, such as the chance die roll for civilians, then NPCs will use the number of actions shown on their boards. That's activation and some actions, so now let's look at when NPCs arrive. And NPCs can appear on the board in various ways. Sometimes they may start the game in a position shown on the mission map, otherwise they may appear via event cards, a special rule in a mission, or via the hostility tracker, just like the Purge. When you activate a certain NPC type, you should first check the hostility tracker to see if any will automatically spawn, and this will be indicated by the icon that you can see here. Like the Purge, NPCs will arrive at a random location around the board determined by the chance die. The numbers on the chance die correspond to the entry point counters. If there are NPCs of multiple ranks eligible to arrive at the same time, place the lowest rank available. Once you've determined the NPCs arriving and their entry point, place them on the board in contact with that entry point. If there is no room because the area is blocked by other models, place them as close as possible. And once the NPCs are all on the board, you can activate them as normal. If there are multiple NPC types shown on the hostility tracker, do not place the next type until you have finished activating the current one. And note that just like the Purge, if you are required to place an NPC and there are no more available, then none are placed. When NPCs are required to attack or interact with another character, they must select a target, and this process is very similar to the Purge, but NPCs will prioritise certain targets over others. Each type of NPC has a target priority list that should be used alongside these steps. If the NPC is in base contact with any enemies, their target will be the highest priority of the characters in contact that they can damage. If they cannot damage any of the engaged enemies, they will attack the highest priority target with no effect. If the NPC has no enemies in base contact, but there are enemies in line of sight, the target will be the highest priority of those visible. If there are multiple enemies of the same priority, the target will be the closest of those not in cover. If all are in cover, the target will be the closest. and if an NPC needs to shoot its chosen target but is unable to damage it, a civilian shooting at a live one for example, it will instead target the next highest priority enemy in line of sight. If there are no other enemies in line of sight, it will still attack the original target but with no effect. If there are no enemies in line of sight, the target will instead be the closest, highest priority target available, and work this out by measuring the shortest possible distance between the NPC and the enemies, moving around terrain and through doors as necessary. And the final step are that defeated traders are never targeted. NPCs that need to move past other enemy characters to reach their target or fulfill their designated action must do so without entering base contact. If they cannot, they will instead enter base contact with the character that they could not get past, and then they have to stop. And remember, NPCs that take a move action always move as far as possible, so for example the full 4 inches, unless they move into base contact with a target, at which point they will stop. NPCs can fire up to medium range and follow the normal rules for shooting at engaged characters. And finally, NPCs are unaffected by this result unless it's stated otherwise. Now let's take a look at the rules for civilians and how they will interact. And each time you activate a civilian, you roll the chance die, and the result will determine the action they take during that round. And you'll see on page 40 that there are 6 results that you can get from that die roll, and each result will tell you what to do with your civilian NPC. NPCs will also attack the Purge, and under normal circumstances they'll avoid the Purge wherever possible. Unless a civilian rolls an attack result, they will not move within 4 inches of the Purge. If they start their activation within 4 inches of the Purge, any movement they make, if any, must first be made directly away from the Purge, and only once they are out of range will they continue their selected actions as normal. And civilians leaving base contact with the Purge provoke attacks of opportunity as normal. Civilians come with a target priority list, and the first target they'll prioritise are the Purge, and then second will be gangers or traders, whichever is closest. But note that civilians will not attack Galactic Corps, security, or each other, and do not consider these groups as enemies. Civilians are never considered to be enemies except by the Purge, who of course consider everyone an enemy. If a civilian moves out of base contact with civilians, they will not attract an attack of opportunity. You'll notice that the core set will come with 3 civilian characters, and normally when these run out you will not need to bring any more onto the board. However, if you have additional trader crews, you'll notice that the back of their trader cards shows them in their civilian guise, and you can use any spare traders as civilians in this way. Just choose one at random from those available when required. Conversely, you'll note that the civilian boards have trader profiles on their reverse sides, and any of them can be hired as traders as normal. We'll cover this in the crew part of the video series, which is part 10, where we look at crews and missions. But if this is the case, they will not be available to use as civilians in your game, so just bear that in mind. This covers all the rules you need for the NPCs now, but on page 43 of the core rulebook, you'll see there's a great NPC phase example. So if you want to see it all played out as an example, then you can read that page, and that's a great way to really get these rules embedded. That brings us to the end of part 9, the NPC phase, and so now you know everything you need to know to play the NPCs in your game. But come and join me for part 10, the final part in this series, where we'll look at crews and missions. Everything we go through in this How to Play Core Space video series is taken from the Core Space rulebook, and you can buy this separately or find it as part of the Core Space starter set. And if you haven't got this set already, then I can highly recommend it, and I've done a video where I've unboxed all the contents and gone through it in loads of detail so you can see exactly what's included and a little bit about the game.
So if you'd like to check that out, I'll put links in the description below to Battle Systems website where you can get all their products, but also Element Games where you can save up to 20%. And you can also watch videos on how to build the terrain and all the different components that come with it. And then I've done another video where we go through all the tokens and cards in lots of detail too. I've also done videos where you can learn how to paint both Ariana and all the other miniatures that come in that core set. So check out those videos if you're interested in painting your miniatures, and I can highly recommend doing that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and it'd be great to see you in the next video of the series. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. If you like this kind of content and would like to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks to everyone who's joined so far. It's really awesome. We hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, share ideas and help each other out, and you'll get some perks there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description, and it'll be great to see you there.